Hey friend, welcome back to the Care Collective podcast, a space where we talk about the real, unfiltered experience of caregiving and the parts that don't always get said out loud. Because caregiving isn't just what you do for someone else, it's about what it does to you and the person that it helps you become. So today, we're talking about something that can feel a little complicated, emotional, and I'm definitely speaking from experience on this one because we're talking about siblings, and I am the oldest of 8. So trust me when I say I know a lot about dealing with siblings sometimes. But I think that what I have heard from a lot of people, and even see myself, is that the older you get, the more complex your relationships get. And I think particularly in caregiving situations, if your parents have been the glue of the family, making you get along with your siblings, once that dynamic changes, it can really just throw you for a loop and make it difficult to figure out how you're supposed to navigate this decision while you're also navigating the care together, right? Beyond the messy relationships at times. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the psychology behind these relationships, what's going on there, and give some advice and things that you can hopefully focus on to be able to improve just your relationships, because again, I do truly believe that caregiving takes a village. You cannot do it all on your own realistically, and I know that it's natural to want to do everything for your person, and maybe you feel like you're the only one that can do it right, or things have been complicated with your siblings, right? But I have really been able to grow and lean on my siblings in times of need when things get really stressful. And so I really hope that this is something you can work on. There's always time to fix a relationship. So without further ado, let's just dive into it. So first, I want to talk about why sibling dynamics can be so hard in caregiving, because I think there's a thing that people don't always realize or recognize, is that sometimes, caregiving is not really going to create these dynamics as much as we think it causes these problems. I think it more just exposes and magnifies the problems that were already there. Because research actually shows that when families enter caregiving roles, their old roles, their expectations, and even childhood wounds tend to resurface. So if you were always the responsible one, or maybe you're the invisible one, or maybe you think that you're your mom's favorite, or even the one that had to hold everything together, right? Like, those things are going to resurface when you are stuck in these situations, and they might even intensify even more and really make you feel like you're stuck and like you're back being a kid again, right? Because suddenly caregiving, it's not just about helping someone you love, it's about navigating these decades of family patterns and trying to navigate the mess that's on top of it, right? It's not easy to be a caregiver, and the last thing you need is family drama. And so I think another big issue that I see with a lot of people is that the sibling dynamic and how you decide to divide up your roles is rarely equal. It's practically never split evenly between siblings. Research shows that around 36% of caregivers say the sibling who lives the closest takes on the primary role. So sometimes it's not even about convenience or what makes the most sense. Like, it's just literally about, you live the closest, okay, you take mom to her doctor's appointments, right? There's also a strong expectation that daughters will step into caregiving more so than the sons. And I know I even see this with, daughter-in-laws taking care of their in-laws when they start to age, and maybe even more so than their own sons are taking care of them, right? So I think there's also an undue burden on women to be the caregiver, even if they're not the oldest child. Although, again, I don't think care always has to fall on the oldest child or only on the women. I think that there needs to be a lot of responsibility spread evenly to be able to help that sense of responsibility, right? And so this might look something like one person handling doctor's appointments, medication, the emotional support, the grocery runs, and others might be less involved for whatever reason. And they may say that it's because of family or work or other obligations, but the reality is somebody has to give up those things and has to take care of this person. So whether that's going to be their excuse or they're going to give that up, the decisions have to be made and somebody has to take care of these situations, right? And that right there is one of the biggest sources of resentment between siblings, because it's stressful to be a caregiver. And as much as you can be grateful for the experience, I think you can feel the stress that came with that experience at the same time. And so finding a way to balance and not be upset at your sibling for not showing up in the same way that you are can be really difficult. So now I want to kind of talk about the psychology behind sibling behavior and a few of the patterns that are kind of happening behind the scenes, because again, I am a big fan of naming your feelings, of naming situations, because again, I'm a big fan of being able to really put a name to your feelings, to situations, because I think it gives you a new level of awareness and helps you figure out how you need to respond to a situation because, the way that you defuse a bomb is going to be way different than how you're dealing with somebody because, we would treat a broken bone way different than we would treat cancer, right? And so, similarly in these emotional situations, it's important that we figure out what's going on and try to address that appropriately. So, first pattern is the diffusion of responsibility. So, research can show that when there are multiple siblings, people can subconsciously assume somebody else is going to handle it. And so, it's not that they're selfish, although I think that I would definitely at times call my siblings selfish. Sometimes it's just that there's that lack of perception and understanding of what's going on, right? So, another simple way to look at it is maybe in the office at work, right? Like somebody has left their lunch in the fridge for too long and it starts to smell bad, and everybody's like, well, there's like 20 people in the office, so somebody's going to clean it up. I don't have to do it, right? And you just kind of assume someone else is going to take care of this, and then nobody takes care of it and it does not get done. That same phenomena will happen with your siblings where they just assume, oh yeah, there's a bunch of us, like somebody's going to take care of it. It doesn't have to be me, right? So then that's why I might always default on that one particular person. Also, I want to acknowledge that sibling influence is real. Studies show that siblings' caregiving behaviors actually influence each other, so that means if one sibling steps up, others are more likely to step up, but if one pulls back, the others may follow that pattern too. So, I see this with something as simple as my siblings and cleaning up the living room. So if one of us decides like, I don't want to clean, I'm going to go upstairs and be on my phone or whatever, when you're growing up and your mom wants you to everybody go clean the living room. Once one person leaves, everybody is going to start leaving and not wanting to clean up and be like, well, Michaela's not cleaning up, so why would I have to clean up, right? And so it's little things like that that can really influence as well the caregiving scene and how people are going to step up, because it's kind of an all or nothing effort, right? You may also find that people are willing to help, but they're a little bit hesitant. So maybe they want to step in and help, but they don't know what their role is or how to step in. And maybe this comes from feeling like, they did something wrong in the past, or maybe you're particular about how things are done and they don't want, to step on your toes. So they're like, I have the time, but like you always redo everything I do, so why would I step in and actually do anything to help, right? I think that the more I have grown up in my relationships with my siblings, there have been many times where I have assumed she must be mad at me for this reason. And then come to find out I was completely wrong and that was not what was going on at all, right? So I think it's very important to communicate and try to tell people what's going on so that they can adequately step in and help in any way. So I also want to take a second and talk about the emotional reality behind all of this, because again, everything about caregiving is emotional, and that's okay. That is not a bad thing whatsoever. But I really do think that as you are working on your relationship with someone, it's important to be aware of the feelings and the emotions behind what's going on so that you know how to work through it. And I think on the opposite side, something I've seen with people lately is understanding how that person can understand and respond to boundaries in situations. Because obviously, if somebody mentally is not going to be capable of respecting your boundaries, of understanding anything, it might be better for you to write a letter, burn it, and move on, right? Because you're not going to get any closure from talking to somebody that is not going to take any accountability, that isn't going to understand your boundaries. That's it. That might be all you can do, right? Now, if it is somebody that is trying, that wants to communicate, but you have all these complicated feelings, being able to put a name to that and focus on what you're feeling can help you improve your communication and give more direct steps to what they can do to fix that, right? So I want to talk through a few of those feelings and what they might look like, and feel free, if this is something you are working through currently, to pause, think about how you're feeling with your relationship with your siblings, or maybe even, journal as I'm talking about this, and just think about, when you think about your siblings and if you're feeling some kind of frustration that they aren't helping as much, I want you to try to understand more what that emotion is deeper. So one feeling could be resentment. Maybe it's, why am I doing everything and they do nothing? Maybe it's the feeling of, wow, they just got to go on a vacation with their kids and I couldn't leave mom for more than a day. So why do they get to go and have fun, right? Maybe it's guilt. Maybe you feel bad and you ask them to do one thing and now they're upset at you and you feel guilty for asking them to even help with anything because they have a lot going on with their life, right? So why would you want to burden them with anything? Maybe you're angry and think that they just don't even understand what this is like. Or maybe deep down you're really just feeling loneliness and feeling like you're doing this completely alone. And then you take that feeling out on your sibling. At the same time, maybe you're also just feeling protective of your sibling relationships, or you're afraid to create conflict, or just exhausted trying to keep the peace. And that tension, I think, is where so many caregivers shoulder that burden and pretend it doesn't exist and just try to move on from it, right? Because I think, knowing the personality that so many caregivers have of these natural people that just step into it, sometimes it feels easier to just silently take it on than to deal with it. And I know I have done that many times in my life. So I want to talk through some things that can actually help. Some, because again, I think, like I always say, it's great to talk about these things in theory and to understand the emotions, but I would feel horrible if we talk about it and stress you out and then do not give you any kind of solution to be able to work on this, right? So first thing, and I kind of mentioned this before, is I think you absolutely need to get specific and not emotional about your needs. And again, your emotions are absolutely important. But when it really comes down to it, a lot of caregiving is a to-do list. It's a bunch of tasks that you have to do, right? So instead of being like, oh, you never help with anything, maybe you say something like, can you handle grocery runs every Sunday? Because again, I think a lot of people, especially if you are the oldest, you kind of know that the role that you have had in life, sometimes it just works better to tell everyone what to do, give them a clear role, and they can do that. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can provide that kind of direction to somebody. So even if somebody's a long distance caregiver, maybe you ask them to research nursing homes. Maybe you ask them to research, the upcoming medical decisions you have to be making, and try to find available sources so that you can also review them and be informed next time you go to the doctor, right? Maybe you have them be your mom's designated Amazon person so that if she needs something ordered from Amazon or another online store, that's something they could do from a distance, right? Rather than making you take on everything, try to come up with a list of a few things. Maybe your siblings are able to communicate like, I have 5 hours I can give every week to this, and I want to be able to help, Or maybe they're able to say, Sunday mornings will be mine. I will take mom to church. We'll take care of it, right? But I think, again, the more you can just put into words what you need specifically and tell people, I think you'd find that they are willing to help. And I get it. I wish that they could also read your mind and just pick it up and understand what to do. But unfortunately, we are not mind readers, and that's why we get into the situation that we are now. So I think even just sitting down and asking that one time, would be able to help. And the second thing is to stop assuming they see what you see. And this has been one of the hardest things for me to learn because, I can give you an example, and I might have talked about the story before, so sorry if I'm repeating it, but, me and one of my sisters have very different views of mental health. And I had always struggled with anxiety, and there were times that we'd be trying to do things, like maybe we're going to an amusement park or something, and I would just feel so anxious trying to even get on a roller coaster, or just like, different points in my life where I would feel intense anxiety, and it was just really hard for her to understand and be able to support me through that. And I remember my dad even trying to tell her once, like, yeah, so, she did track, and so he's like, that nervous feeling that you get like right before you're about to run a meet, and how would that feel if you felt that all the time? And she was like, well, it goes away immediately after I run, so like that's not really a problem, so I don't really know what you're trying to say here. And so the point completely went over her head. But, then there were points later in her life where she encountered other things and was able to kind of have a better perspective about what I was going through. But at that time, I just kept feeling like, why can't she just understand what I'm going through? I don't feel like I'm asking for that much beyond just this empathy, right? But in her perspective, she had no experience with it. She had no way to grasp what this abstract thing was that I was trying to communicate to her, right? So these people in your life, your siblings, maybe we're even talking about other people now too, if they don't see what you're handling day in and day out, they're not going to understand when you say, I do everything. They don't know what everything means. Or if you say you never help, they don't know what that means. If in their minds they're thinking, well, I took mom to the doctor the other week, because they're not following you around for every single thing that you do, which can be so hard. And I wish that we could just put a camera on you and then show it to somebody and let them see, everything that's going on, because I think people would have so much more compassion if they were able to just walk in somebody's shoes for a little bit. The third thing to focus on is naming the imbalance or the thing you need help with without attacking. So instead of saying you never help, try focusing on, I'm feeling overwhelmed managing this mostly on my own. Can we figure out a way to divide things differently? So the main thing to emphasize here is, do not say too many you statements. Try to focus on on yourself. Because if you're able to say, I am feeling this way, I am feeling that, that's a fact, essentially, in some ways. Because how you are feeling is how you are feeling. And if you can focus on that rather than trying to place the blame, people can be a lot more receptive to that if you're able to say, hey, I am feeling really stressed today. I'm feeling really anxious about this, right? It shifts that blame away and it makes it a lot easier for somebody to be willing to help you. The fourth thing is to accept what people can't give. And I think this one is hard and I am still working on this myself. But not every sibling is going to show up emotionally, consistently, or show up the way you wish they would. And so I think a lot of times in life, we just have to adjust those expectations and try to, do the best with what we have. And I want to say too that I think this one applies a lot to the grieving process, whether it's anticipatory grief or grief after a loss, that everyone is going to handle it differently and that there is no correct timeline or cycle. I mean, we talk about the stages of grief, but I still think that's even so dependent on the person. You might be in what's considered stage 1 and then move to stage 3 and then go back to stage 1. Like there's no right or wrong way to do it. And so, being respectful of this is how I need to grieve. This is how I am experiencing my parents' loss. My sibling might experience this loss completely differently, and I need to honor that as well. Because, if let's say you got a long distance sibling, they're only going to visit on the holidays. So for them, the holidays might be way more emotional if they are suddenly, every time they see your parents, they've declined a lot more. And that could be really hard for them to handle. And meanwhile, you're sitting there, you're stressed out because you have all these things to do and they only come in once every so often and now they've disrupted your schedule that you already had figured out, right? Like, it's just two very different worlds and two very different sets of feelings going on that are difficult to navigate. And I don't even know if I know a perfect answer to, work through that. But I think at its core, throughout any problem I have been through, as long as I have focused on my siblings and on our relationship, these kind of moments can make us stronger and can really help get through these difficult moments. And number 5, another thing I want you to focus on is building support outside of your siblings, because again, sometimes your siblings are not going to be a support system. And I get that. And that can be really difficult if your relationships are not what you hope they would be. But that's why spaces like this, people who get it, matter so much. And I think, unfortunately, that's when you have to segment your relationship at times and say, okay, I have caregiver friends that get that. My siblings are not going to understand this pain, so I guess that's not going to be a part of our relationship, right? As much as you may want it to be. But I think, again, focusing on those that can give you the connection you need and give you the support you need is going to just allow you to be more present again in your relationship with your siblings, right? So I wanted to just kind of leave you with this thought that caregiving with siblings, it is not logistics, it is not the to-do list, it's not the things to do. It's about your identity, it's about your history, and ultimately that relationship with that person. And while it can create distance, it can cause pain and feel incredibly unfair, in some situations, it can also create a deeper understanding. It can help you heal your inner child and some experiences you went through. And maybe it's even going to be an opportunity for reconnection. But that can only happen when there's communication and boundaries and honesty. So if you've been struggling with sibling dynamics and caregiving, I just want you to know that you are not the only one navigating this. And you're not wrong for feeling what you feel. Again, all of your feelings are completely valid. This is really hard, and it makes sense that it's hard. So if this episode resonated with you, please send it to someone else who might need it. Maybe go ahead and share it with your sibling, and maybe this can give a little bit of insight into what you've been feeling lately, right? But I am just so glad that you showed up today and that you did something to take care of yourself, even if it was just for a moment. So please find us on Instagram at carecollective.podcast. I'd be happy to hear from you. Please send me a DM, and we are absolutely here to support you in any way possible, so always reach out. Until next time.